Okay, I'm going to get started as soon as possible. Again, my name is Jesse. At least that's the only name I use anymore on media. This video is a short introduction and it's an overview. It's not a complete review. I remember before I used the word overview in a video essay on depression, or maybe it was an article, and somebody criticized that it wasn't in depth or there wasn't enough information. Okay, so let me just get started. A quick overview into, I guess we can call them psychotics. See, psychologists don't have problems, or people who study psychology don't have problems using the word psychotic. Basically, it means that you have lost touch with reality. If you have been bullied and you believe that the correct answer is to take a gun to school, you have lost touch with reality, because that's not the adequate solution, or at least it's not the correct solution. So I have my writing pad. Let me get my writing pad up here. Yes, that's the one. Okay, let me just go through. Okay, so I have my writing pad here, and I don't. Oh, everything's got everywhere. No, I'm where I should be. Okay, so and I want to move myself out of the way. And what I'm going to use my writing pad for is just for specific points that need to be made. And then organize my little desk here. Okay, so the first thing is that I am promoting that life is about fun. Okay, and some people may say that's a simplistic statement, but that's the reality of it. The errors we're making is that we're not having fun. In our daily rhythm, in a 24-hour cycle, we are not incorporating fun in our lives, and that's leading to, okay, so life is about fun. Okay, and the way we achieve fun is through pursuing the way to achieve, okay, fun is to, and yes, I do misspell a lot, incorporate, and let me correct that. And it's a teaching tool, so I can correct myself. If it, and one of the things is about that bugs me a lot is how much things are called um, modern technology when in reality they're not. Is to incorporate simple, healthy, okay, simple. I probably should have had a lamp on so I could see the keys, okay, of life. Like friends and family, and I've gone into this, okay? And I want to make that point because everything starts with that for us. We don't control other people. Now, I do have to make a statement on grief, okay? Grief, grief is a natural, okay, so what am I trying to do here, okay? Grief is a natural response, okay, to trauma. And that's important to know. So before I even start the conversation, I want to make two statements. One, that life is about fun. That's how we achieve health. That's how we get over our depression and our anxiety. It's a good tool to minimize the effects of depression and anxiety. So start focusing on ourselves and stop being negative and start being positive. Okay. And since grief is a natural response to trauma, okay, we shouldn't fight it. Okay. And we should be patient with ourselves, and we should allow ourselves to feel reality. And again, the admonition is it's okay to be sad, and maybe it's okay to be angry, but you shouldn't hurt anybody, and you definitely shouldn't hurt yourself. Okay, but don't get lost in that. Don't get lost in it. Start using the strategies in positive ideation, believing in yourself, having hope, looking at what's good in life. That's the problem, is we get brainwashed into focusing on the negative, to looking at everything that is wrong. And we do need to be aware of things, because we need to be on top of things so they don't cause us serious problems. So we need to pay our bills, we need to be nice at work, we need to be careful how we're driving. Yes, we need to have all of this stuff. Okay. But we shouldn't be obsessing on the things that go wrong. What we have control over, we take control over, and we do what needs to get done. What we don't have control over, we don't obsess on. So I need to make those principle statements that grief is a natural response, that it is okay to cry. It's not okay to stay sad and depressed and to get angry at the world. And those are all natural responses. Don't hate yourself if you're going through them. Those are natural responses. But what you want to do is you want to find balance. And after you've felt those horrible emotions, you want to put them in their place. There is a conversation that I've written articles and posted videos on how we cannot change the past. The lives that are lost are lost. None of us can bring them back from the dead. They're special. I'm at, very far removed from the incident, but I'm sure that the friends and the family members are suffering greatly because of the people that they loved and they have lost. And the worst thing is to make things worse, to make yourself sick, to harm yourself, or worse is to think that you need to harm someone else. You just got to be patient with yourself, and you want to love yourself, and you want to take care of yourself. And the emotion that you feel it, you don't fight it, you don't repress it, but you also put it in its place. And you give yourself the necessary time to heal properly. And there is a natural way of healing properly, and that is to fight negativity with positivity, to fight anger with love. And that's a lot of, one of the biggest problems is that we don't love ourselves. We don't consider ourselves valuable people. And we got to start recognizing that we are good people, and that we need to stop torturing ourselves with our negative thoughts and our negative ideas. And it takes time, so you got to be patient. So having made those two principal statements, the next thing that I'm going to concentrate on is biology. And on the issue of biology, unfortunately, many people have have a brain that is their own worst enemy. The physical structures of the brain, the nerves and the neurons and the neurotransmitters are fighting them, and they're fighting them because they're producing a chemistry that leads a lot to anxiety. It could even lead to depression, and the depression after a while leads to anxiety. There's a combination. There is no, one size fits all in psychology. The human mind, what we can think of in order to deal with anxiety is enormous. We have a lot at our disposal, and we use it all, and we're always constantly going down the wrong road. So the first thing I want to say is biology. Biology is important. The brain is important. Now, once you identify something, well, what comes out of a bad brain? Well, a lot of angst comes out. Whoops. Talk about not knowing how to spell. It's just I need a light. Angst. Yeah. Angst comes out of a bad brain. And rage comes out of a bad brain. Depression. And of course anxiety. Okay. So you want to identify the systems. Okay. So if we were born, with a brain that is our own worst enemy, for whatever reasons, particular, the brain is divided into different systems that are taken care of by different regions of the brain, different areas. And the interesting thing about the human brain is that if you remove a piece of the brain that is responsible for a particular function, other parts of the brain start to develop neurons and nerves for that function to continue. And that's interesting that you would have growth in cells and nerves, and you have connections where neurotransmitters can flow to, and what is missing in the brain can be taken up by other parts of the brain. But when you have a bad brain, as far as the issue that I'm discussing, is responsible for angst and rage and depression. And this is things that the individual wants to control. Again, nobody wants to be what we call a horrible monster, but it's overwhelming. It's hard. Now, after biology comes environment. And I don't like that whole, you know, um, nature nurture debate. Never liked it. Even when I was a student of psychology, I never liked it. I thought it was foolish, because it's not that they're arguing God, it's just that you're arguing stupidity. You are born a blank slate. You don't have information in your brain. You need to learn words and meanings of words in order to have understanding, to have awareness. So we are born blank slates. And what about instinct? Well, is instinct really instinct? I mean, if you see an object coming at you, you're going to swat it away, even if you're a baby. Or you're going to, cringe, or, try to avoid it. It's a foolish argument, and I'm not arguing that. Okay. But environment, and the environment that I'm talking about is abusive. So in the issue, an abusive environment, in the issue of individuals who go to malls, who go to churches, who go to schools, okay? So you start off with the possibility, not an absolute, the possibility of biology being a problem, and then the possibility of environment where a parent or both parents or a family member or a family friend or some stranger has abused a child. And that will result in a lot of pain and suffering that the individual will try to deal with. And here's this fits in perfect right here, what I call the fear dynamic. Okay, when we believe, and spelling is important. Okay, so I just switched the letters. Okay, fear dynamic. Okay, so we're under attack, and we feel the emotions of being under attack. Okay, we start to become defensive. Okay, to protect ourselves, we either run or we put up a fight. When you have recurring thoughts of pain and suffering, you identify the person you think was attacking you. Let me write that. When we have recurring thoughts of someone attacking us, we decide we need to strike back. This is what's going on in the human being if a person is under attack. Mental torture. Of course, if you're under... That's not what I wanted. I know what I wanted. Oh, okay, this is what I wanted. We need to strike back. I was watching it, and this television program should have never been allowed to exist. I believe it's called Criminal Minds, and you have all these actors standing around like they're the smartest people, and that they decode behavior, and it's garbage. In behavioral psychology is garbage, and actual generic psychology is garbage. But what is obvious in documentaries and in the way sometimes things are presented on television or movies is that the individual is killing the people that represent the person he or she thinks it's harming them. Whether a sister humiliated them, an uncle raped them, I mean, the human mind, the way it attempts to deal with stress, sometimes can be rather extreme. Where some people would choose therapy, where some people would talk things out and put things in perspective and find the balance, whether it's an abusive marriage or in a school where bullies are constantly stressing the person out with their attacks. There are better ways, but sometimes people really do go to extremes. Murderers and rapists are trying to solve the the challenge that is presented by the fear dynamic. Fear in humanity is very toxic. A lot of what a lot of pain and suffering comes from things that people are fearing, but they're not aware that they're fearing. Like if you were a 5-year-old girl that was repeatedly raped, and there's something that you know that is annoying you in your psyche, some unsettledness, some awkwardness, some angst, some pain and suffering, because you're afraid that you're going to become assaulted again. Say, and enough, you know, if you want to say, let's say you could measure fear in pounds. Once you get to 1,000 pounds on top of somebody's psyche, 1,000 pounds of fear on somebody's psyche, then you get a defensive fear response. The person lashes out in self-defense. Now, this is not an excuse, but if you want to understand, remember that the human psychology is composed of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and behavior, and we're always evaluating our behavior. And there is a social component of that we want to be liked. And sometimes the rejection isn't that the people out there are rejecting us, is that we perceive the rejection because we have a poor self-image, we have poor self-esteem, and you get into paranoia when you have poor self-esteem. But it is important right here in environment and talking about abuse that the person starts to feel fear, and we even become afraid of fear because we want to resolve our issues. But as soon as we start thinking about our issues, we start to feel that panic, that fear, and then we become afraid of fear because that represents pain and suffering. So we meet a wall of fear, and we're no longer able to continue concentrating and asking ourselves, what is the issue? What is the psychological issue? And how do I resolve this issue? Okay. Now, a person, regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of culture, who decides to come to a school with a weapon and harm a lot of people, okay, has gone through the thought process of these individuals represent those who are harming me, and I need to stop them, okay? Because otherwise they'll attack me. It's a very simple linear thought line, and most of us, we can all say that we wouldn't go to school to shoot up people, but we've been angry. We wanted to punch people, road rage, and that's, well, road rage is distinct. It's psychosis. See, okay, control. When we don't have control, we're very afraid. Okay? And when we're very afraid, we in our mind identify, let's call it a fear object, what is going to attack us. And some people go from identifying a fear object to saying, I need to destroy this fear object. This thing that is harming me, I need to destroy it. Okay, now, in psychosis, remember, this is the issue of an individual who would go to the public right away, school, whatever, and start killing people, or even in a private business. Discussing these people, you start with the biology and then the possibility of abuse. Also, the possibility of just psychosis in itself, psychosis that has no place in abuse, where there is no abuse and where there is no bad biology, and the person has lived a life of thoughts that have created a personality that needs to kill, wants to kill, loves to kill. Killers enjoy their craft. If you've seen the interviews with the quote unquote Iceman, which I don't think a hitman for the mob can be called a serial killer, but if you see it, and let me go ahead and where was I? Okay, so we're defensive. Okay, and I want to make this point that today the the suspect is available. Okay, today the suspect is okay. Too many things here to type correctly. Let me see here. Is available for interviews, and that's important because the majority of the time you don't have it, and what you end up using is forensic psychology. You interview friends, you interview family members, you look through hospital records, mental institution records, criminal records. But today the person's available. But what you're going to get from that, and the reason I come to this is because I was talking about the documentaries that are available on serial killers, murderers, um, interviews with serial killers and murderers. And what you always have is this cop and criminal dynamic, where the criminal believes he's smarter because all cops are stupid as far as the criminal is concerned. And when the cop is asking a question, the response of the criminal is a sarcastic response. So you're not getting truth. So, and that dynamic exists when you see interviews of serial killers and murderers. They're trying to prove that they're a whole lot smarter than the interviewer, anticipate the meaning of the question, and then bring in the question the integrity of the interviewer because they're asking a question that sort of goes around the issue, trying to get at some kind of false statement from the suspect. And it's important to understand the reason that I make this video is because if we understand the dynamic that is going on in the worst of us, we can see our own flaws, and then we can say, this is what I need to fix. I need to fix my rambling thoughts. I need to fix my thoughts about anger. I need to find a better way to cope with pain and suffering. Say, and I've looked into it long enough, meditated on the issue, written articles, done video essays on it, to where I am very, very convinced that we can deal with the majority of our emotional trauma is by focusing on what's good in life, by enjoying life, by having fun. We do have to, we were made as social people, not social animals. Even dogs are social. That's why even though humans are miserable creeps, dogs hang around them. Okay, and I'll stand by that statement. We have so much potential for greatness, and we waste it. We waste it. It's sad how much pain and suffering is out there that doesn't have to be out there if people would just find a healthy way to deal with such much pain and suffering. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are going to come out of this. The shooting that just happened in the school with 17 dead, pretty sure they're going to come out of it with long-term depression, long-term anxiety. I'm pretty sure that many of them are going to develop a bad attitude of life, a negative attitude of life, are going to stop looking at what's beautiful in life. And that harms us. It is the analogy of the plant. The plant needs sun, the plant needs fertilizer, and the plant needs water. And if you as an individual are not getting pleasure, are not enjoying your life and are torturing yourself with your inner voice, you are going to shrivel up and die. You're going to become an angry person. You're going to become a bitter person. Now, what's the solution? Can positive psychology, positive ideation, thinking positive, thinking happy, making ourselves happy with our positive and healthy thoughts and happy thoughts, can that be have any kind of value whatsoever on serial killers, murderers, and rapists? Some of this is choice. Unfortunately, sometimes if you review the literature, you find out that there is no reason. They were never raped as children. They were never used as punching bags as children. Their parents never used negative language. Never called them stupid or dumb, or you never said you're never going to amount to anything, or or a bunch of ranting, irrational ranting and raving. And the biology is fine. And the only thing that you have left is that this individual decided, as a healthy person, this individual decided to harm other people and decided to harm other people for joy. Mm. It just came to my mind that there was a TV documentary series with an individual who had a PhD in psychology, who had reviewed all the different mental processes engaged in murderers and serial killers and everything. And he finally comes to the conclusion that there's a missing element, and that missing element is evil. And for a long time in psychology, in my personal meditations in psychology, I just wouldn't give any credit to God and Satan in human behavior and human emotions and human thought. But I have come to realize that, yeah, Satan and his demons are pushing people's buttons. You know, two people who don't know each other, cross each other's paths wherever, in on a sidewalk, whatever, and they look at each other and they start growling at each other like animals. Where does that come from? Well, it's fear response, and it's a lack of control response. And we're not animals. We're not lions. I wish a lot of mental health scientists would realize that the human being cannot be evaluated like you would evaluate a dog or a cat. We're too complex for that. But the point being is how do you explain road rage? You don't know the person. The person who is behaving aggressively doesn't know the person that he's behaving aggressively to, and the person who's receiving the aggression doesn't know that person. They know the aggression exists, but if you're an 80-pound woman and some 400-pound trucker wants to harass you on the road, who's going to win that competition? So why is the 80-pound woman believing that you can pick a fight on the road with this person? Saying it's not the correct answer. The correct answer is to drive to safety, to stay in control, to stay calm. And it is stressful to drive. But all of these dynamics and thoughts can either help us survive or contribute to our destruction. And a lot of times what we're thinking is contributing to poor behavior because we're having poor thoughts. Say, again, this person exists. This person will be interviewed by the people with the highest education in mental health in his region. And that doesn't necessarily mean that something's going to come of it. Because a lot of times the person just spends his time, mentally fighting with the interviewer. And not because the person doesn't want to go to jail, it's because they develop this dynamic in their mind where they think they're the smartest person on the planet. Okay. And yeah, where I work, there are several people who just go off the deep end. If I'm attacked, I know personally because I worked in security and because I know psychology, you can't let it stand. If somebody comes at you, you have to put them down because that person is going to continue to come at you because they believe that you're never going to defend yourself. There's crazy people out there, and I guess that's another. I'm always security minded. There's a lot of that. That's a lot, and I should have done this. This is going to be one of my 3 principles, but I'll go ahead and add it here. The thing that needs to be discussed, you know, is security. Having worked in security, I can tell you that you can secure any place, and I'm going to tell you how. The first thing you do in your home, in a mall, in a hospital, in a government building, is you need a strong perimeter. Okay, chain link fence is not a strong perimeter. Okay, it's not. You need a strong perimeter now. And I may have misspelled it, but that's okay. Now, there are people who will say, well, who cares if you got a fence if the criminal will jump over it? Well, in security, you should have cameras, okay? And somebody should be looking at those cameras, and anybody jumping over the fence should be considered a threat. That means you need personnel, well-trained personnel, okay? Now, yeah, the 10 years that I worked security, I wouldn't trusted those people for anything. But we need to start thinking smart. You have a strong perimeter. You have gates that are locked, okay, electronic locks on them, magnetic locks. You have people at cameras, monitors, who are monitoring, we're looking at the monitors that are bringing in the image from the cameras, and that's probably a better statement here. Okay, monitors and cameras. Okay, and then when you see somebody suspicious behavior, anybody jumping over the fence is suspicious. Even a teacher at a school, you recognize as a teacher they're jumping over the fence. It's suspicious. The well-trained personnel should go talk to that person. And well-trained, and you're not gonna like this one, and well-armed. A handgun doesn't make you crazy. There's no material in a handgun that the mere act of a person touching that handgun is going to make that person crazy. No such material. If we believe that there's something in the handgun, then police officers shouldn't have handguns. Military shouldn't have weapons. And if you follow that foolish stupidity, the only people that are going to have weapons are criminals. Criminals don't follow the law. Okay, so just to make sure I cover my points here, you first have to look at biology. And then you have to look at the possibility of environment. No on video games. I'm sorry. I know that people believe that violent video games make people violent. Sorry. In order for that to be true, Hitler would have had to have had video games. Genghis Khan had no video games. All the crazy people, the majority of human experience, didn't have video games. But we have had a lot of violence throughout the human experience without video games. Okay, so, but an abusive parent or just the most extreme abuse that you can imagine can contribute to a person who has a lot of pain, a lot of anguish, and is looking for a relief for that pain and anguish. And when they identify a person who represents a threat, they believe they need to eliminate that threat. And all of this has to do with the fear dynamic, which leads to a defensive attitude. And that defensive attitude can either be, walk away, but for a lot of people, it's attack. Okay, we need to know that we're not learning. This is one of the things that drives me crazy. Is and I'm not going to pay any attention to it. to the news because the word that does not fit here. Let me see here. Should be able to write this word down. Okay, the word that just does not fit here. It's yeah, I'm not going to be able to write it. Schizophrenia. Huh. Well, more or less, give or take. Okay, schizophrenia. Why does it not fit? Because schizophrenia is a big title for a lot of other small illnesses. The generic schizophrenia is just rambling thoughts, body movements, irrational, just rambling, but it's the same phrase over and over again. People twirling their hair, leg and arm movements. That's generic schizophrenia and has very little to offer in the understanding, in the thoughts, emotions that lead to behavior in a person who goes to, let's call it a public arena, even though it's private property, and decides to start killing people. Okay. Is there a difference between terrorists and public shooters? Yeah, because one is led by philosophy of murder, and the other one is can be from the brain not being healthy, from being a victim of violence and aggression, or living a life where murder becomes acceptable. Now, I forgot this, and that's why I review. Okay, there is a behavioral model. Okay, if you look into the see, yeah, okay. If you look into this, if you spend as much time watching, what in the world? Aha, okay, behavioral model. Okay, if you spend as much time looking at documents as I do, one of the common things that you'll see in murderers, serial killers, is that there's usually somebody. Okay, let me see here. There is, oh, here we go again. Yeah, I should have turned on the light. There is usually somebody who kills in the presence of another, and then that person believes murder is acceptable. This is seen in a lot of cases. Uh, I don't believe that was a dynamic in Jeffrey Dahmer. Um, looking at Charles Manson, um, the Unabomber was a test subject for something called MK Ultra, done by the CIA. If I'm correct, at Harvard. I'm not making it up. Research it. Maybe I got a little bit of the facts wrong, but a secret CIA project, Mr. Unabomber participated in it, and what they were attempting to do was to break the spirit of the individual with how do you how do I explain the experiment? At least is how I saw it. Well, you have an impressionable person, and there was the Unabomber, and you have people who this individual regards, respects, considers, has great consideration for, and then those people turn on them, ridicule, laugh at the person, and then they measured the effect on Mr. Unabomber. And for some odd reason, I can't remember his name, but that's okay. Yes, I can use another system here and see what the What I am forgetting, excuse me. You know, and yes, I am taking it sort of, with a cynical laughter because the general public just knows of Ted Kaczynski. Yes, the general public knows of Ted Kaczynski, who was mailing bombs to judges and other areas and killed a certain amount of people. What they don't know is that he was involved in MK Ultra experiments conducted by the CIA at the university that he was, and what they were trying to do was break the person's spirit. Now, how this benefits the military or espionage, I don't even want to think of how breaking a person's spirit. Well, I guess you can turn the person. You can make the person weak, and if people want to be accepted and accepted by those who they regard, then they definitely want to work towards regaining the approval of the people that they think are good people, and they may divulge information. So I guess by breaking that spirit, you can have these people give you information. It may be a tactic of, what's it called? Extracting information. And we'll leave it there. Because, so I was going to say that Charles Manson, again, if you do the research, had connections with politicians, business people, and important people in the entertainment district. Now, and I bring it up because if you're studying crazy people, murderers, Charles Manson never killed anybody, by the way. He manipulated people into doing killing for him. He himself never killed anybody. Okay. However, when you look at society, and this is important in human psychology and understanding that sometimes, where do I put this? Well, there are people in power. There is a group of people in power. And there is a group of people in power who lust for children, to have sex with children, and to have sex with a lot of children. And they use Charles Manson, people like Charles Manson, to gain their, their victims. So a lot of times, is not that the person is crazy, is that the person belongs to the society and is murdering and harming people in order to help those people who are wealthy. And the way it impacts you and I is because we live in this environment. I've been watching Netflix documentaries about major corporations and the unethical practices, if not criminal practices, that they were conducting. Somewhere in Africa, no more water. And there's water. There's just no more water for the poor. There's water for the rich. The warehouse, the manufacturing warehouse, is never going to run out of water. Even here in El Paso, Texas, the manufacturing warehouse, the people with money, never going to run out of water. The poor people are going to run out of water. Now, to me, it's obvious. It's beyond proven that what you see in television, movies, and I'm not about, guy watches horror movies, what is it, Friday the 13th and Halloween, and all of a sudden becomes Michael Myers or Jason. No, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about attitude, illness. A lot of our negativity comes from media, and I think it's deliberate. I think it's deliberate. They want a society of unhealthy people. And the reason I bring it up in this conversation is because we just know so much. we know a lot. Like, you can read books, you can watch documentaries, and you will see the depth of knowledge in human psychology and mental health issues where we shouldn't be dealing with these issues. But for some odd reason, we're not using our intelligence. And the reason we're not using our intelligence, and that's the part that's important to hear, is that we can be resolving some of these issues, but we're not. Schools don't have strong perimeters. Schools don't have magnetic locks. Schools don't have CCTV monitors and an armed guard watching them, not on the phone, not eating his hoagie, actually paying attention to the monitors. And you don't have armed security personnel or even law enforcement personnel patrolling. El Paso, Texas has peace officers for their public schools, but they're on. I don't know what they're doing because they're not in the schools. They're not patrolling the schools. Who knows what the heck they're doing? Waiting around for something to happen, I guess. And a lot of money spent. You don't have armed guards in the schools, but you have a department of peace officers, and that's the way Texas works. You're a certified peace officer. You take courses, and then you can, it's almost like going to a police academy. It doesn't matter. We're smart. We can create clinics where people can self-identify that they have these thoughts, and then you develop a strategy. You develop the medicines that the person will be given, and the group or individual therapy that the person will be given. We can start restructuring thought. We can start unraveling the irrational thoughts that these violent, aggressive people have, and start inputting more rational thoughts, so they're not violent and aggressive. I mean, imagine the world where a person recognizes that they have thoughts in their head of harming a child, and they can go to a clinic and say, I am thinking of raping a child. And then the mental health professional comes out and says, we need you to take this medication, and 3 days of the week, we need you to come and talk to us, and we're going to talk about your thoughts, how you process information, what are your coping mechanisms. We need you to understand and value life and recognize that you cannot harm a child, that you cannot put a child through that kind of pain and suffering for your own personal benefit. And you can restructure thought and change the values, the core values of this individual. So it's sort of a simple strategy in behavioral psychology where you can obsess on the bad behavior, or you can teach good behavior. You can get the person involved in good behavior. And we have this kind of wisdom. And the reality is we have the financial resources. But those in charge, the politicians, the businesses, the people who run hospitals, are trying to give us all the impression that there's nothing that can be done. Now, for you as the individual, if the politicians and the businesses won't react, you defend yourself. If I have to defend my life with force, and the end result of that force is that I end up in jail, so be it. So be it. It's your life. Don't act irrational. See, you act irrational when you're attacked and you don't know what to do. But when you know what to do, when you're taking self-defense courses, when you have a stun gun, when you have pepper spray, when you have a handgun, when you have a baseball bat, when you know how to look for objects in your home that you can use as weapons, you're comfortable fighting back. You're not going to enter into that stage of panic, the deer caught in the headlights, and you're going to know when to fight back. I think one of the most important strategies is to look, if you have the ability, for the person to drop their guard. Then you bash them over the head with a baseball bat. You wait for your opportunity, you take your opportunity. Sometimes you even use psychology and you wear them down. You get them to believe that you're not a threat to them. And once they drop their guard, you bash them over the head with a baseball bat. Or you shoot them, or you stab them, or you run them over. People keep asking me about weapons. I tell them, look, When I'm out in public, I'm driving a dangerous weapon. I'm not leaving my vehicle. I said this before. I'm not going to leave my vehicle. I'll run the person over if that person presents a threat to my life. Okay? You don't have to be violent. You don't have to have a fear response. You don't have to feel that you're not in charge and in control. You remain calm. You look for your opportunity. You take your opportunity. Because outside of that, we're not going to open clinics where people can come in and say, I always have this urge to punch my wife in the face. We're not going to have these clinics. You know, it's wait for something to go wrong and then call the cops. And the cops are not mental health techs. They're not PhDs in psychology. They're not masters, clinicians with masters in psychology. They're not psychiatrists. Yes, the legal system is the wrong place for people with these kind of thoughts. Well, you want to be careful with government training or retraining institutions, because that's just communists, where the government is trying to tell you what to think. And if you don't think what the government wants you to think, they put you in a concentration camp. That's just communism. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about thought control. I'm talking about people who have illnesses, and mental illness is related to thinking as well as to emotions. And of course, you need medication, because a lot of times it's the brain itself that is a problem to individuals. Now, just to close this off, go back to my principal statements here on grief. It is a natural response. It has a natural process. You will serve yourself better if you don't automatically assume the worst and guide yourself into a dark corner of helplessness. We cannot change what happened. We cannot bring any of those people back. We can honor their memory by living good lives and continuing to pursue what's good and beautiful in life. As hard as that's going to be, but you walk there one step after another step after another step, and eventually you get there because you're focusing on what's healthy. You're focusing on what's good. You're focusing on what's decent. You're focusing on yourself, and you're taking care of yourself. And as you're able to take more steps, you start going back to the basics of life, which life is supposed to be about fun. We are supposed to be responsible, where we can have fun while we're responsible. And we can be respectful of each other. And we can enjoy life with the simple, healthy pleasures of life, which, name it: canoeing, bicycling, comedy, talking to friends, talking to family. Life continues to be beautiful, and it's there for us to take everything that life has to offer. And yes, these events are sad, and we all wish that they would not happen, but unfortunately they do happen, and we have to deal with them. And the powers that be are just not going to stand up and do what is correct. Thank you for listening, and I wish you well.